I got to think about the story of Noah. Now, the thing about the story of Noah is, for those of you who don't know, a lot of times we put Noah in a category, and a category of children's stories. You know, we have a tendency of thinking the story of Noah, it's a kid's story. And that's innocent enough. I mean, yeah, you probably heard it as a kid. If you spent time in church as a kid growing up, you went to Sunday school, vacation, Bible school, stuff like that, you heard the story of Noah. It was a bedtime story for whatever reason. It was read to you as a kid to help give you peace when you went to bed. I don't see how a massive flood wiping off the face of the earth is peaceful and causes a kid to go to sleep, but, it's whatever. But, people, we use it as a children's story, and that's all well and good, but the problem I've found, and I say this from personal experience, this isn't me looking at you saying this is where you're doing it wrong, I've found within myself is that when you're putting things like the story of Noah in that category, and you come to read it in the book of Genesis, you have a tendency of just brushing over it, because you're like, well, I know the story of Noah. Or when you get to the story of Jonah, well, I know the story of Jonah. So you just brush over it, and you never slow down long enough to say, okay, what's God really doing here? What's going on in this story? Because, guys, the story of Noah is not one that is just a few verses long. And that's my dilemma. Because I don't like starting midway of a story and finishing it. I love to start at the beginning and run all the way to the end of it. Well, when you got a story that lasts for about 3 chapters, and I had a pastor growing up who always said, the mind will only absorb that which the butt can stand. I've only got a limited amount of time before your mind goes numb and I've lost you. I might as well just quit, right? So I was sitting down and I was looking at the story of Noah, and I'm going to come back and revisit the beginning of this story another time. I'm not going to be able to do it justice because there's a lot in this story, and the beginning of this story, I've got a message and a half that has been eating me alive, but it ain't for tonight. It ain't for tonight, and that's, it ain't there. The story, actually, the part of the story I want to talk about is in the latter part of the story of Noah. It's pretty much the very end of the story of Noah. The story of Noah, and I'm going to give you a quick summary. Hopefully I'm not going to be here with you very long tonight. I'm not going to keep you very long. This is pretty short and sweet. But the story of Noah begins in chapter 6 of the book of Genesis, and we find a particular verse where it says that the thoughts and the intents of man was continuously on evil. In other words, guys, there's been a lot of stuff occurring, and like I said, I ain't getting into all of it. There's been a lot of stuff going on in the world, and right now we're coming down to where we have nobody save Noah and his family that are found in all the land, in the entire world, guys, in the entire world. Only one man and his family has been found to be righteous in the eyes of God and before man, and God says, Noah, I got a job for you. So he tells Noah, he comes to a man named Noah. I'm only going through this for a very good reason, guys, because for one, I don't take for granted that anybody in here knows what I'm talking about. So that way, when I'm all said and done, you're going, I don't get it, what happened in the beginning of the story? You can't say that. You need to know the whole story. Go back and read Genesis chapter 6, 7, 8, and 9. Read the entire story. It's a beautiful story. But you see that we find this man named Noah. God comes and talks to a man named Noah, and he tells him, he says, Noah, I need you to build an ark. I need you to build an ark because it's going to rain. It's going to rain, it's going to flood the entire earth. I'm going to cleanse the earth. Now, some versions of your Bibles will say annihilate the earth. And that's a good terminology. The problem with that is sometimes we paint this picture like God just destroyed the earth. He didn't. When the waters receded, there was earth. He did not annihilate earth. What did He do then? He cleansed it. He purged it. He washed it clean of the sin that was soaked around it. What it had been marinating in, He completely purged it and got rid of it, right? Now, I want you to think, I don't know about you guys, but when I read the Bible, I have a tendency of stopping and doing kind of like a self-examination as I'm reading these stories. And the thing about Noah is, man, when you stop and look at Noah, and you're like, we want to complain whenever things get tough, and God asks us to do things that's a little uncomfortable. And I'm like, when you look at this story of this man, think with me for a minute. Okay, this kid story, the one that everybody knows. Here's this guy that God shows up to and says, Noah, I need you to build a boat. You ever thought that maybe Noah had Noah ever even seen a boat? Probably not. And then he says, no, because it's going to rain. He'd never seen rain. He said, because it's going to flood. Never flooded. And he said, I'm calling you to do something, to prepare for something that you have not seen, nor has it entered into your mind, nor have you possibly imagined the fullness of what is about to come upon the earth. You are going to be making preparation for it, even though you've never seen anything like it. Guys, listen, I know in the story of Noah we're talking about judgment, but I feel really strongly within me that the church needs to get a revelation of that. Quit sitting down and making preparation for Sunday morning service to come in here and see what you've already seen. Quit making preparation to come in here on Sunday night to experience what you've already experienced because I want to be where I was last Tuesday or last Sunday. No, it ain't about that. It's about sitting down and saying, God, I want to make preparation for something that has not even entered into my imagination what it is you want to do. Let me make preparation for that. And Noah is making preparation. I ain't got room to complain, sissy. I was sitting there like, well, God's asking me to do it. Yeah, well, I kind of know the outcome. I've seen it. You know what I'm saying? He ain't seen nothing of the sort. And God's saying, make preparation. So He's making preparation. Bible says that He builds the ark. Now, like I said, I'm rushing through this. There's a lot of details, a lot of stuff, and it's eating me up, Gabe, because I want to stop. But it goes all the way through, all the details, the size of this ark, everything that was done. He gets his family together because the time has finally come that this crazy man in the middle of the desert is building a boat, and everybody walking. But could you imagine what people thought walking by Noah's house every day? I mean, really? We get all upset when people look at us like we're crazy. Could you imagine being Noah? People walking by going, what are you doing? No, I'm building a boat. What for? It's going to rain. What? What's rain? It's going to come down from heaven. I'm telling you, God's already told me. You're nuts, Noah. You're crazy. Off your rocker, pal. You don't know what you're talking about. And sometimes, guys, God will make you do things that will cause people to walk by you and say, you're crazy. I read a thing one time that says, faith makes you look crazy until it starts to rain. And then when it starts to rain, everybody's like, uh-oh, that guy was on to something, you know? And that's exactly where Noah's at. He's building the boat. Everything comes together. God sends him the animals. Like I said, we're running through this, and I'm getting to the end of it. And so He sends him the animals, 2 by 2, every animal. Brings them into the ark. This is the beautiful story, you know? Brings them into the ark, and they all get in the ark, and they're on, and it starts to rain. God shuts the door. When God shut the door, there was no opening it. Noah didn't shut it. Noah's sons didn't shut it. God shut the door. And when God shut the door, rain began to fall. When the rain began to fall, it did not quit for 40 days and 40 nights. It continuously rained. It said that the earth opened up and the waters from the deep began to boil up from within the earth. God, there's a message in that right there. There was water purging forth from out of the earth to cleanse the very thing that God... You see what I'm saying? God has instilled in you, child of God, the water, living water, that will, if you will allow it, God will let it burst forth in you and purge you of what it is that you've picked up that's corrupted you so often in your life. God says, I will bring forth the waters from the deep. We're looking for an outside experience. We're looking for somebody. We're looking for somebody like me to come in here and start laying hands and squalling and making things happen. And God says the answer that you're looking for is not going to be found outside of you, but it is found within you. Make preparation for the waters that is within to burst forth and cleanse. The waters of the deep bursted forth, and when the earth flooded, the entire world flooded underwater. It's amazing when I love nature. Love it. I know some of y'all think this is crazy. Some people, when they want to take a vacation and get away and relax, some people go to a beach. I like that too. Some people go to outlet malls. I don't understand it. Some people go to fancy restaurants. I'm cheap, you know. But at the end of the day, my thing, I love to hike. And I'm not a serious, don't take me wrong. I'm not the guy with the backpack goes out for 3 days at a time. I like beds, okay? But I like nature. I love nature. I love hunting season for that reason. You said, did you get anything? I didn't get nothing, but it was quiet and I got to see God's beauty. I love nature. And if you ever get out in nature and you start looking around and you start seeing some of these rock formations, and you stop and look around and say, how in the world? And science will say, oh, it was billions and billions of years of gases. I don't know what all they'll say. All kinds of fun, wonderful things. I'm not a scientist. I don't know if you noticed that or not. But the fact of the matter is, you kind of picked up on that, didn't you? You're going to get more of it here in a minute. But water. You look at these things and I'm like, there is no way this happened but any other way, by any other means than water. How did we get these big giant crevices and canyons? Would that not happen when water bursts forth from out of the depths of the earth? You see what I'm saying, guys? We want evidence. We want evidence of the work of God, and the evidence of the work of God is all around you. I've seen people hunt and dig and study, trying to find the evidence of the story of Noah, and I'm just simply saying, guys, if you want evidence of God's work in your life, just open your eyes and look around. Look around you tonight, and you're going to see evidences of God. I look around tonight and I see miracles sitting on pews. I see people who should have been dead and gone a long time ago, and they're still here. What is that? That's evidence that there is a God in heaven. And His promises are yea and amen. His promises are true. They do not change. They do not fade. They do not waver. They are solid. Look around you to see the evidences of God. And the waters burst forth and it flooded 40 days, 40 nights. Now this didn't just happen. See, that's the part of the story we get lost in as kids. You know, like, oh, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. At the end of 40 days and 40 nights, they parked the boat in the dock, got out, and everything was good. No! No! That's a lot of water, y'all. A lot of water. About 5 months or so into this, they start sending out birds. We got to find out if there's land. I mean, guys, I don't know if you can put yourself in the place that I do when I read these stories, but I mean, it takes a lot of faith to build a boat. It takes a lot of faith to believe in rain that's something you've never seen. It takes a lot of faith to prepare for a judgment you've never possibly imagined. But it takes even greater faith to set in that boat on water with your in-laws. I'm going to look over here to y'all when I say that. She's sitting over there. She's looking at me, Andy. You see her looking at me? She ain't looking at me. Okay. But but you're stuck on this boat with your family for this length of time with guys, there's no GPS. They're not experienced mariners. They're not experienced sailors. Even if there was, this was probably long before the time I would imagine people started looking at the stars and going, well, that's north and that's east. And it wouldn't have mattered because there's no land. And they're sitting in this boat going, well, hopefully the water goes down. Because if it don't, we're kind of going to run out of food. I'm going to have to eat the elephant here in a minute. You start looking, think about that. That takes a lot of faith. Could you imagine the moments that he went through in his mind looking around after, month 3, going, you think it's going to, dry out anytime soon? So they started about month 5, started sending out birds, sending out a raven. Raven didn't come back, so they sent out the dove. Dove finally comes back with the olive branch. You guys know the story. Finally, they send it out, and the dove doesn't come back, which means they say, oh, he's found land because he's found somewhere to put his feet. He's staying. He's not back. There's land out there. So God directs them, I believe, perfectly to the highest point of the land. Ararat is how you say Ararat. Ararat, I don't know how you say it, but that's where the boat landed. And that's where they stopped. Now I want you to listen to this. The Bible says that they get out and they start making sacrifices unto God. You would too. You go through all that, you're going to get out praising God too. Take a big deep breath there and by, I'm moving. Whenever God said disperse, be fruitful and multiply, I don't know why they didn't. I'd have been running. Like, I don't want no more family reunions for a while. This took place for a year, guys. They were on this. Think about this. Holidays are bad enough for a couple of days with some of your family, right? You're stuck with this bunch on a boat for a year. That's faith. You laugh if you want. You know it's true. And here they are. They get off the boat and they start making sacrifices because they have lived through this experience, this wonderful thing. God's judgment has come and He has spared this family. And then in chapter 9, we start seeing God start changing the order of things. You see, this is where God starts implementing things like the death penalty. He starts talking about when you shed blood, your life is required of you. He starts talking about the animals being afraid of man. Did you ever think about that verse when it says, then the animals and the beasts became afraid of Noah and them? Up until this point, they hadn't been. Why? Because they wasn't eating them. It's at this point that God says you can eat them. You be scared too. God says you can eat them, and they say, "Oh, I've been eyeballing you." And so animals started being. There's this change of the order of things here. When God moves, when God brings judgment, things change. When God moves in your life, whether it's in a judgmental way, whether it's in whatever it may be, things are going to change in your world. God doesn't change, but your world does. Your culture does, if you'll let me put it that way. God doesn't change, your culture does. But then there was something that occurred, and this is what happened to me the other day on the way home. It's funny because it ain't rained a drop of rain at my house for like 2 weeks. Praise God, because I've had some stuff I needed to get done around the house. But in verse 12 of chapter 9, and I've run all over the place, and I didn't give her the first thing. But in chapter 9 of Genesis, verse 12, and God said, "This is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you, and every living creature that is with you, for perpetual generations. I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth." God put a rainbow in the sky. Guys, there's a whole great deal of depth to looking into rainbows, but as I was thinking about this on the way home, and I know this is going to be like story time, and some of y'all is going to be like, "Why are you telling?" But there's a point. About a year or so ago, I was standing on the tracks with a group of guys, and something was said about rainbows, and I said something about Noah, and this guy looked at me, he said, "Huh?" I said, "Noah." He said, "Okay." I said, Noah, and who built the ark? Noah, He said, "Yeah, I know the story of Noah, the animals too." He said, "But what's that got to do with rainbows?" And I said, "Are you serious right now?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "You know the story of Noah, but you don't know about the rainbow." He said, "No." And I was coming home the other day, Gabe, and I thought, if there was ever a predicament that we've run into sometimes in the world, it's that. We've put so much emphasis and so much vision. We put so much on the judgment of God. We talk about the rain and how long it lasted and how miserable it was and how dirty the earth was and what all God had to do, but we fail to stop and say, but there was a promise at the end of it. There was a promise that was given from God to man. The rainbow is not the promise. He said it will be a sign of a promise. In other words, listen to me. Listen to me. I want you to see this. Did you know that rainbows are not actually a half circle? Pictures taken from outer space will show you that a rainbow is in fact an entire circle. It's a full circle. You're only seeing part of it because you can't possibly get back far enough to see the whole thing. But what you need to know is what part of it you see is a sign of a promise. That doesn't mean that there's not another half of that promise. You hear what I'm saying? Sometimes, guys, we only see parts of God's promises in our lives, and we get discouraged because we think, oh, well, this is the only part of the promise I get. But just because you can't see the other side of the circle doesn't mean it's not there. Just because you can't see the rainbow doesn't mean the promise is not there. But occasionally, on tonight's like tonight, God will open up the heavens and you get to see the rainbow and see the sign of a promise made by God to His people. We put too much emphasis on the judgment and not on the promise. We want to tell people they're lost, but we don't want to tell them there's a way out. We want to tell them you're sick, but we don't want to lay hands and pray. We want to tell them all of these things, but we don't want to talk about the promise. Why? Because the promise requires something of you. The promise requires something of you. Here about a month or so ago, it did rain. And my family and I, we have this thing. We love rainbows. Love them. I think they're awesome. I think it's just an amazing thing to see. And I was coming home, and it was still drizzling to rain, but it's one of those summer, you see this in summertime and springtime a lot. You've seen the dark cloud way out there, but the sun was, right behind you. And it was raining, but in those conditions, when the conditions are right, and you're standing, you're like, I know there's a rainbow here somewhere. I know there's why, because I see the sun. Listen to me. When it's raining, and when you see the judgment, you see the rain falling, and everybody else is focused on the rain. Everybody else is saying, man, it's really pouring down. You're the child of God that is to turn around and say, yes, I know it's raining, but there's the sun. The sun is still shining. looking. Can I tell you? Guys, the sun's shining and the rain's falling. What's missing is the church getting out of the car and saying, where's it at? Where's it at? Where's the sign? Where's the sign of promise? Because I know it's here. But here's the thing. I got home that day, and it was so funny because I got home that day, my wife and my kids were all outside in the rain. All of them outside in the rain. Kids were running and playing, but here's my wife, like a crazy person, in the yard. You say you're making fun of her? No, because I got out of the car and I went, I know it's here too. Where's it at? Listen to what happened. Listen. This is the message. This is it. This is the message. I pulled up and I got out of my car and she's out in the yard looking. I said, it's here. She said, I know. Where's it at? I said, I seen it coming in. She said, where's it at? I said, it's right there behind them trees. She said, what? I said, behind the trees. I said, do you see it through the leaves? Right through there. She said, I think I see it. Here's the thing. I didn't. I wish I had, but I didn't think about it. If I had titled tonight's message anything, it would have been Positioning for Promise. Because I'm sitting here going, the promise is there, the sign is there, the rainbow's there, and it's complete. That's the circle. That's the point of the circle, in case you didn't get that a minute ago. It is evermore. It never stops. It is continuous. It never stops. Going right back to what Pastor Ralph talked about this morning, east from the west, it never stops. It is continual. God's promises are never ending. They never stop. They never run out. They never fade. That's the promises of God. And I get out of the car and I said, it's right over there. It's behind the trees. And we were standing there, and what was so funny was for a moment, Sherry, we stood there and was looking through the trees. Going, I think I said, yeah, it's right there. And I'm pointing to this thing. And then I said, you know what? I bet. There it is! If I just take a few steps over, there it is! There's the promise! But you see, that's the problem. A lot of us want to stand right here and go, I don't see it. I don't see it. You're telling me God's promises, but I don't see it. I don't believe it because I can't see it. I don't understand. It can't be true because I've been here for 15 years. I ain't never seen it. Don't tell me. I know what I'm talking about. I don't see it. Well, move. The promise don't move for you. You move for the promise. You can stand there all day long and that thing ain't moving, honey. Who moves? You do. You're the one that moves. When we do talk about promises, we want to sit down and go, yep, pour it out, Lord. And God says, I need you to move. You still put that on one of them. He says, yeah, but you can't see the promise if you don't move. You can't see the sign if you don't move. Lord, bless me. Move. Lord, heal me. Move. Lord, give me promise. Move. Move. Quit sitting in one place expecting God to do something that He can't do where you're at. He said, move. So we moved. And what was so awesome, this is what else is awesome, is we moved and I said, yeah, there it is. She said, oh, I see it. And then we got the kids. You see, when you see a promise, you say, oh, God put a rainbow in the sky for me. Yes, He did. But it ain't just for you, honey. It ain't just for you. When you see the promise, it ain't meant for you to hold on to it and say, oh, I see it. No, it's meant for you to say, come here. Come here. Look. There's the sign. Come here. Look. There it is. Get your kids. Come here. Look. That's a promise from God right there. And the kids come up and they said, oh, wow, there it is. I said, yeah, isn't it cool? Well, he's excited. And I said, you know what? It's kind of fading. There it is again. Now, eventually dark comes. Eventually the sign, the promise doesn't disappear. The promise, remember, I keep mixing and matching, and I'm sorry I do that because I get excited and I run off, but the rainbow isn't the promise, it's a sign of the promise. The sign may start to fade. And it may not be as prominent as it once was. You ever had that? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Everybody in here, if you've ever received Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and I pray God every one of you has, but if you've ever made that proclamation of salvation, you know that for a while, man, I heard a man describe it one time. He said it felt like you could take on hell with a water pistol. You was 10 foot tall and bulletproof. You was ready to go. You had it. You were ready to go. But then you noticed that as time progressed, Andy, you started kind of losing that feeling. Now, you start kind of losing that feeling. You're not quite so, you're not quite so giddy about it. Well, does that mean that it's faded? No. I started fading. Now, does that mean that I'm wrong? Does that mean I'm lost? No. Stop it. That's where we get these people who want to sit around and beat themselves up day in and day out and wonder why they're so miserable. Well, I'd be too if I beat myself half to death every day. It's like going 10 rounds in a boxing ring with somebody, just getting your head pounded and you're going, I don't know why I don't feel good. Well, quit beating yourself up so hard. Just because you don't see it, ooh, that could have been bad. That could have hurt right there. Put that right there. I about fell off this thing one night, and I could have seen that right there. I'd have been the guy who would have tripped over the water bottle and killed myself right here in front of everybody. The sign begins to fade, but the promise doesn't. But when the sign begins to fade, sometimes it's not about going, well, I guess the sign's fading. Sometimes it's God saying, no, you need to move a little more. Guys, listen. I believe with everything in me, God is moving in His church. And I believe with everything in me that we're a part of that. I believe we're a part of it. When I say in His church, I mean the whole church, and I believe we're included in that. I do. And sometimes, guys, what happens if we're not careful, we say, how do I get in this place individually on a personal basis, not corporately? Now we're going to talk personally. Sometimes we wonder, why are we not on fire as we once was? Why are we not experiencing what we once experienced? Why are we not seeing what we once seen? Why are we not hearing what we once heard? Why is it everything seems that it's not exactly what it used to be? And it could very well just be because you're sitting in one place, expecting God to move the promise to where you are. And God saying, I just need you to move a few steps to the right, and I'll show you the sign. I'll show you what I've got for you. You see, the thing about this story that I waited until now to tell you is that in order for us to see the sign of that promise, we had to step out in judgment. The rain in the story of Noah was judgment. That was God's judgment on the world. And in order for us to get to that place where we could see the sign of promise, we couldn't sit in my living room, sissy, and go, well, maybe we'll see it if we look hard enough. No, if I really want to see it, I got to get out in the rain. Too many of us want to stay dry. We don't want God. I thought of a scripture in Psalms 139, I believe it's verse 23 and 24, when He says, search me, O God, search me. Guys, listen, we want to see the promise. Guess what? Sometimes that requires you to step out in judgment. Sometimes that requires us to step out from our place where we have that look of, well, I ain't got nothing wrong with me. Okay. You're the most humble person we've ever met, ain't you? I bet you'd tell me too, wouldn't you? I'm good. Yeah, sure. Okay. Sometimes it requires you to step out from where you are. What happened here tonight? What happens anytime? I'm persuaded of this. Anytime you start seeing God move in a mighty way, it's because God's people started getting on their face and saying what David said in different ways, but they say what David said, which is, search me, O God. Can you bring up Psalms 139:23? Psalms 139:23. I'm almost positive. Well, yeah. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. Oh man, you want to talk about deep? David's digging deep, y'all. He's saying, don't just brush over. Don't just brush over it and say, well, yeah, it's okay. No, I want you to dig deep. Go down. Don't just know. He said, know my heart. Know the intentions of who I am. Then He said, know my thoughts. Get in my head. Get in my head, God. I need you in my head because I don't need to be there alone in myself. Go to verse 24. I love this part. And see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way of everlasting. In order to see the sign of promise, we got to step into judgment. And when we step into judgment, it requires of us to say, God, search me. Search my heart, search my thoughts, and whatever you find, cleanse it and lead me in the path of everlasting. That's where we are. Move to see the promise because it's there. And even if you can't see it, know it's there. Pastor Ralph.
I tell you what, man, they are truly a blessing, and it's an honor to be in the sanctuary with them tonight and watch them do the talents that the Lord's gave them. You know what? I was sitting there and I was watching them kids. Man. You ever know they're going to switch it up on you? You ever watch? Goodness sake. Is that me? Huh? All right, Lord, I'll do it. I was watching them kids, and they was watching Lillian. Did you watch them? And they were just, everything she did. You know what? Our life would be a lot easier if we would be like that with the Lord. You know what? Whenever He says, I want you to do this, if we just go ahead and do it, our life and daily thing would be a whole lot easier, wouldn't it? He said, just follow me. That's all I want out of you. Just follow me. He didn't say, I want you to go out here and I want you to dig a ditch all the way around this place, or I want you to build it up 3 stories high. I want you to follow me. Our life would be a whole lot easier if we just follow Him. Troy, if we would go where He told us to go, instead of where we want to go, that's the problem right there. We want to do things our way. We want God to be convenient to us. We want God to be that, Lord, I want you when I really want you and need you. But for right now, I'm going to do what I want to do. See, it don't work like that with Him. If we would just do it, if we would do what He told us to do, Andy, it would be a whole lot simpler life than what it is. This country would be in a whole lot better shape if they would just do and talk to Him for His instructions. Instead of doing things our own way, we're going to be all kilter. We're going to talk about storms tonight. And you ever notice whenever you go, I think that we go through things as ministers for a reason. And I think we go through things for people. I think we go through things that He shows us things, Brother Lee. If we ain't going through a storm, Sid, we ain't going to learn unless we go through the storm. We can talk about the storm, and we can look at the storm, and we can run away from the storm, but until we face the storm, we have to go through the storm sometimes. And we're going to read. I better read or I'm going to get all psyched up and won't be able to read. Because I'm telling you, I have been anxious. It's been a long time since I've been this anxious to get to the sanctuary tonight. I was chomping at the bit as soon as I got home from work today. Like I told Rena, I said, I'm a little nervous tonight. And, I've been a little bit settled, and you feel like you get to that spot where you feel like you're doing what He wants you to do, but tonight, I feel an urgency tonight for somebody. I think somebody in here is going through something, and you don't have to go through it. But we're going to read in Acts chapter 27. I didn't even give them anything because my mind's been so scattered. Acts 27, we're going to start in verse 17. We're going to read a few verses. We're going to talk about some anchors and some storms and who's the anchor and how the anchor is a big part of it. Being proper, attached to the anchor's in the right spot. I didn't know the anchor had to be in the right spot on a boat, but apparently it does. 17 says, which when they had taken up, I'm going to try things aggravate me because I'm a panting it. Where am I at? 17. Which then they had taken up, they used helps, which it's rope, undergirding the ship, and fearing lest they should fall into the quicksand, straight sail, and so were driven. And when being exceedingly tossed with the tempest, the next day they lightened the ship. And the third day we cast out with our own hands. Pay attention right there, their own hands. They tackle of the ship. And when neither sun nor stars in many days appeared, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope that we should be saved was then taken away. But after a long absence, Paul stood forth in the midst of them and said, Sirs, you should have hearkened unto me, and not have loosened from Crete, and to have gained this harm and loss. And now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but of the ship. For there stood by me this night the angel of God, whose I am and whose I serve, saying, Fear not, Paul, you must be brought before Caesar, and lo, God has given you all them who sail with you. Wherefore, sirs, be of good cheer, for I believe God that it shall be even as was told. Howbeit, we must be cast upon a certain island. But when the 14th night was come, as we were driven up and down Adria, I guess how you would say, about midnight, and shipmen, them that they drew near from some country, and sounded, and found it 20 fathoms. And when they had gone a little farther, they sounded again, and found it 15 fathoms. Then, fearing lest we should have fallen upon rocks, they cast out 4 anchors. We're going to talk about these anchors now. They cast out 4 anchors out of the stern, and wished for the day. And as the shipmen were about to flee out of the ship, then they let down the boat into the sea under cover, as though they have cast anchors out of the foreship. Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, Except these abide in the ship, you cannot be saved. If you go back up in verse 14, I knew I shouldn't put that on. Get out of here, devil. If you notice back in 15, even the storm had a name. Now, I can't pronounce that name. I'm not an English major. How many people here has got a storm that's named right now that you're facing? How many people has got the storm of fear? How many people's got the storm of discouragement? How many's got the storm of depression? How many's got the storm of fearing for my children? How many's got the storm of a job loss? How many's got the storm of addiction? That storm can be anything in your life right now. It's got a name. It was a hurricane. It had a name. Your storm's got a name tonight. If you didn't worship the way you should have worshiped, you're facing a storm. You've got something in front of you. You've got something that's distracting you. Now, you know what? It might be a small storm, but if you don't take care of it, it will become a bigger storm. That's why we have to go through it. That's why we got to take care of it. We have to be able to be willing to face the storms. About 10 years ago, they were 3 or 4 young men, and they were football players. And it was down around Tampa, I think, it was on the Gulf, and they had a fishing boat. And they went out into the Gulf, and y'all remember, I think only one survivor. There's 3 or 4 that went out, and they got out there, and they was fishing, having a good time, and this storm came. And 3 of the men lost their lives. And when they found the one, he was out there for 2 days, and he was sitting on top of the boat, had a hold of that motor because the boat was upside down, and he was locked on to that motor when they found him. Anyways, they done surveys and everything else. Come to find out, the boat was improper anchored, is why it tipped over. How many people tonight has got their anchor in something it shouldn't be anchored in? How many people tonight's got your anchor in something, Sherry, that's going to capsize you? How many people's got their anchor going against the current of life and we're heading to destruction? He tells us, Paul gave them advice. He told them what? To brace up. In the one verse there, he told them to brace up. In other words, the storm was coming. The storm was already happening. And they took rope and went around the boat, Kleiny. Now, can you imagine the guy that got on this side of the boat? And I will do that jump that Taylor said. He went down, Kleiny, and he swam under the boat and brought the rope up on the other side. And soon then they would throw it back. They throw the rope back over, and what happened? He would do it again, do the process again, until they wrapped the boat. They braced it for impact. Let me tell you something. When you're facing your storm, you have to be ready and brace yourself. You have to be willing to brace yourself, Andy. Hey, whenever a tornado's coming, what does people do? They put wood over their windows. Why? To protect them. When the storm's coming, we don't just sit there and let it happen to us, do we? We at least get under shelter, or we go to underground. Some people tonight are facing their storm without cover. You are facing your storm and you're not braced up. Jeremiah 1:5 says, you don't have to go there, I'll read it. It said that before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, ordained you as prophets and to the nations. He knew you before you was even born. Now there's some of us, we're not on the path that we should be. I'm a firm believer that I think that when I was born, that I had a path that He wanted me on, and it was up to me to get to that point in my life and make the right decisions to be on that path that He wanted me to be on. There's some people that are going through life and you are not on the path that you should be on because why? You are not anchored properly. I sound like I am. Am I loud? I feel like I'm blaring my ears out up here. But people's walking around like they're not anchored properly. Brace up. Get ready. The storm is coming. You say, well, how do I do that? How do I brace up? Well, number one, we got to talk to Him. We have to be willing to talk to Him to figure out what's the proper way to be braced up. Can everybody remember the tornado that come through about 10 years ago? It came right past Glen Hayes where I lived and went up Lost Creek, and you can see the path of the storm it come through. When the storm comes, it's got a path of destruction, and whatever's in its way, it's going to take it. If we are standing out in the wide open and like them news people saying, come on, storm, you know what? It's going to kill you if we're not properly anchored. The second thing that He told them was to cheer up. That is a big tool today. Today we need to just cheer up a little bit. Not walk around with our heads down. You know what? The one that hung the stars is on your side. The one that told the sun, this is where you're going to be, He's on your side. The one that made man in the garden, He's on your side. The one that brought the light, He's on your side. The one that was with David on the battlefield that day that guided the stone, He's on your side. That's why we should be cheerful. That's why it's easy to face a storm and be of good cheer. Because we know who holds tomorrow. We even know that the storm takes us out, that who holds it in our hands? He does. He is the Alpha and the Omega and the beginning and the end, and He holds it all, and He's on your side. He is for you, not against you. He don't even have you as a servant. He calls you friend. Closer to you than a mother. The third thing is lighten up. Lighten up. It's not as bad as it looks. You know what, Shug? Every time in my life when I went through bad times, it could have been worse than what it was. Any times that I've been sick, you know what? It could have been worse than what it was. When I had an accident about a year and a half ago and broke both wrists, you know what? It could have been worse than what it was. Even though I was down for about 6 weeks, you know what? It could have been worse than what it was. I could have broke my neck. I could have broke my back. Even though I was in pain for a little bit, but it could have been worse than what it was. Even though you may have come through addiction, it could still be worse than what it was. Even though you're going through a bad marriage, it could still be worse than what it is. Lighten up, lighten your load. What did they do? They threw things off the boat that they needed to get through it. Think about that. First thing they throwed off was just maybe cargo. But then they started what? Throwing the tackle off. Throwing stuff off that the ship needed. But it was worth throwing it off the boat to save your life. You know what lighten your load is? Getting rid of discouragement. Getting rid of negativity. Getting away of talking about the brother. Getting away of maybe I need to worship a little bit. Getting things out of the way to where I can be in fine tune. Lighten your load. Lighten it. There's some of you looking at me right now and say, what is that guy talking about? Lighten your load. Don't look at me, hear the word. If he says lighten your load, lighten your load. You're looking at an old boy, he lightened his load about 7 years ago. I lightened it big time. Lightened it big time. You know what? When I lightened my load, you know what, Andy? My life got a whole lot better. And yours will too, if you lighten your load. Cheer up. Fear not, for he's with you. Brace up. Can we say brace up? Can we say cheer up? Can we say lighten the load? You already feel better, don't you? That's how simple it is. We want to hold it in all the time. We want to do the packing all the time. You know what? I was knowing something. My dad, if you know my dad, he will work you to death. And he's waiting for me to get home from work. Literally. It's like entertain. I mean, I'm not talking down about my dad, but you ever hear things go full circle in life? That's the way it is right now. He's waiting on me to get home, watching me. There's times he'll stop me before I get from the truck to the house. Hey, come over here, man. I got something going on. But he's got a couple of projects, though. And there was a stack of lumber that laid over there for probably 2 months because he had a job he wanted to do. But you know what? Time got in the way to where we couldn't get to that project. Things going on, even as I didn't feel like it. Him waiting on me. Sometimes I wait on him. But you know what? The Lord blessed us to have that lumber. You know what? That's not going to get put up on its own. I don't care how good you are now. I don't care how good you can measure a rule. I don't care how good you can saw a board. Let me tell you something, Sid. Them boards won't stand up on their own. You got to put a little work into it. You know what? About a week ago, I got my second wind. And I warned him. I said, bro, you get ready next week. I got a couple of jobs I want to do. You know what he was like? It's about time that you better get ready to go. He'll be 76 years old October the 13th, and I can't outwork him still. He's waiting on me, Kleiny. He's like, I've been wanting to hear that a long time, boy. Let's get it done. But you know what? Until I got myself in gear, it wasn't going to get done. It's the same way of us growing as Christians. We can talk about it. We can read about it. But until we're willing to put a little work in to be braced up, cheered up, and lightened up, it's not going to get done. It's not going to get done. It's going to take us to do it. There's 3 things. I wrote 3 things down here that the devil attacks me with every time that I get one of my little moods. And my wife can tell you my little moods. This is Aaron Walker's baggage. And if anybody knows me close, I'm an open book. I don't hold nothing back. Number 1, I'm not good enough. Every time things are going good for me, every time things seem like they're going smooth, it can take one little thing, and all of a sudden the devil tells me, Sid, I'm not good enough. You know how many times I leave this church, and after I may have spoken a message, or I may come in here to worship, or I may try to help somebody, as soon as I walk out that door, you're not good enough, son. You can't preach like Ralph Muncie. You can't preach like Gabriel Smith. You'll never be a Steve Ramey. That's what I hear all the time, is these voices in my head. You're not good enough. It's even like that at work with me. I'll try to do something the best of my ability, and he'll tell me, you're not good enough. You've been an electrician how long and you still blow that up? You're not good enough. I hear that all the time. Second thing I hear, I'm a failure. I'm a failure. And that alarm even told me, you're a failure. You know how many times I hear that a day? Whenever things don't go right at the house, I even say things wrong every now and then, and I'll think, I'm a failure. I'm not good enough. And you say, and you feel like that? Yeah. I'm just like you. I'm no different than you. As long as I'm in this skin, I'm like anybody else. I face these battles every day of my life. When I used to coach, he can't coach a lick. You ain't good enough to get off the sidelines. Somebody told me one time, you can't coach your way out of a paper bag. I felt like saying, how big's the bag? You might be talking about a garbage bag or a sandwich bag. Number 3, I'm not wanted. I feel that way sometimes. I go somewhere, feel like people gives me the cold shoulder. I feel like I'm not wanted, Kleiny. I'll go home. I do feel like that sometimes. I'm getting real with you right now. I'm telling you what, and I tell you what I battle with all the time. You know, I try to treat everybody as good as I do my wife. I try to treat people as good as I would anybody. And this year's been a rough year. I'm not going to give you a big pity party, but it's been a rough year. I've been attacked and everything, I feel like. But it's all apart because it's what lives inside of us. It's not what I've done, but people don't like what's inside of you. Because when you bear witness of the light, you're going to face storms. When you bear witness of the light, you're going to walk through fire. When you bear witness of the light, you better be braced up and cheered up and also lightened up, because the world don't like what's inside of us. Let's just get real just a little bit. This country don't like what's inside of us right now. Our politicians don't like what's inside of us right now. You think they don't? Well, you go here, you start doing something on a square somewhere, we'll be arrested. They don't like us. Because why? Because they don't like what's inside of us. Because you know why? It tells the truth. It tells them their faults. It tells them their sin. That's why people attack us, because when they get close to the light, they see their own faults. That's why we've got to be anchored in good. Whew, man. We're going to talk about them 4 anchors. The Bible said they put 4 anchors. They done everything they could. They lightened the load. They done the boat, everything that they should do. They braced it up. And still they even tested to see how deep the waters was, because they could hear the sounds of the shore, of the waves that hit and everything. They kept dropping that anchor to find out when they could throw their anchors. And when they did, they dropped all 4 anchors. What are you anchored into tonight? I'm going to tell you anchor number 1. You have a purpose. You have a purpose in your life. It don't matter what anybody tells you. It could be your father. It could be your mother. It could be a teacher. They could down you some way. You have a purpose in your life. It doesn't matter if Donald Trump tells you. It don't matter if Joe Biden tells you. You have a purpose. It said in Jeremiah that He knew you from your mother's womb. He was destined for something great. He had you know what, there ain't no wonder, Mary, why He says that the path is narrow and it is straight. Because you have a purpose in your life. It doesn't matter what your husband tells you. It don't matter what your wife tells you. It don't even matter what your kids tell you. But if He's telling you you've got a purpose, and He's getting you, and He gives you a vision, you need to do it. Because that's the anchor for you. That is your anchor. You have a purpose. When people tell you that you're no good, oh yeah, I've got a purpose. When people says you ain't no count, yeah, I've got a purpose. I'm anchored into something that is stronger than I. I'm anchored into something that is stronger than you. I'm anchored into something that's stronger than America. You have a purpose in your life. Don't never forget it. He designed you. He knew you. He knows every hair on your head. He knows how many liters of fluid goes through your kidneys a day. He knows how much. That man right there can examine your heart all the time, but the physician can tell him and tell you how much blood flows through your heart by the minute. Why? Because He made you. He made you because you have a purpose in your life. If it's to play a piano in a church, that's a purpose. You need to do it. If it's to teach Sunday school, that's a purpose. You need to do it. You have a purpose in your life. Never forget it. Anchor number 2, courage. You have to have courage. You might be thinking I'm talking about the courage of being the bold and go out and face the giant and sling the stone and let it go. Or you might think I'm talking about the courage of pick so many men and go in and do exactly what He told you and break the lanterns and do that. No. I'm talking about the courage is whenever you're in last place, you still run the race hard. And you finish the race. Even though you're dead last, you give it 100%. Even though it looks like you're not going to win, you still give it 100%. Even though you think that person in front of you will never catch it, you still give 100%. Courage is looking at your son or your daughter and saying, that person's no good for you, son. Or that's no good for you, daughter. Whenever they want to date the cool guy or date the pretty girl and you know it's going down a bad road for them, it takes courage to look at your kids in the eye and says, that's no good for you. That's courage. Courage is putting a smile upon your face after you've had a heart attack. Courage is putting a smile upon your face whenever you just went through cancer. You know what? This room is filled with people with courage. That man right there's got courage. That brother right there's got courage. This sister right here's taking care of her mother. Whoa! That's courage! It's the courage that we don't see is the big courage. We want to say, oh, that guy, he threw 5 touchdowns. Boy, he had a lot of courage. No. You let him take care of somebody for 6 weeks. That woman right there, she had courage. She took care of me. And she takes care of me every day. Boy, she's got big courage. You laugh, but you don't know. I got a lot of baggage. I got a lot of junk I've thrown off my boat over the years. Shoo, man. My boat looked like a cargo ship one time, and now it's getting small. Number 3. This has been a topic a lot in this church here lately. Third anchor, worship. Worship. Now listen to all this before I say it, okay? We don't worship Him for what He's done. We don't worship Him for Him getting us through a rough patch. We worship Him, and when I say this, it covers all the rest. We worship Him for who He is. Not what He done for Aaron Walker when he went through depression. That's not why I worship Him. Not because He saved me, even though it's big, but what I'm saying is when I worship Him, it covers all the rest of it. Am I making myself clear right there where I don't step on somebody's toes here? When we worship Him, it covers everything else. Because when I worship Him, He saved me. When I worship Him, it's what He's already done for me. When I worship Him, it's because He gave me the breath of life. When I worship Him, it's because I'm working for something that's down the road. You know what? Champions, they don't worry about what they're going through right now. Champions see the outcome of things. They see the outcome. It's not the tough ball game that somebody's in right now, but they know that they're talented enough and they're good enough that they're going to win the game, and they see themselves holding the trophy. That's the way we need to be. We're going to make it. We're tough enough. We're good enough. And we're going to get to the end. And right there we see the finish line. What did Christ do? Christ hung on the cross. And even though they was legions of angels that would have came and got Him any time, He told them no. Because why? Because He knew why He was there. He knew the finish line. He knew the purpose. He knew what He had to do. That's why he done what he did. Though he went through the pain. You know what? Even though the pain was horrible on him, but he looked through the pain. He went through the pain for you and for me. Because why? He could see the finish line. He knew the final product. He knew the final say-so. And the fourth thing is to be anchored to the church. You know what? If that's him, that podium, every now and then, I'm obedient. And I do what I should do. And I pray like I should. And I talk to him like I should. And there's every now and then, Aaron Walker's right here. At the feet of him. I'm right here. I'm covered. I'm in the, like Regina's song says, I'm in the overflow. All right? But I got a leash on me, Kleiny. All right? And every now and then, I get thinking about what I'm going to do for the summer. I get thinking about what I'm going to do for the fall. I get thinking about deer season. I get thinking about camping season, Andy. I get thinking about all these things. And what happens to me? I'm drifting. I'm drifting. Is that what you guys are sometimes? We drift. We're out here floating. We're having a good time. We're over at Maria's pool. Having a good time over at Ralph and Maria's. I'm drifting. I'm still drifting. I may go ride side by sides with Andy. It's been a long time, but we rode side by sides together. I'm drifting. I'm drifting. And all of a sudden I get to a point, Mary, to where I'm out there a little bit too far. Have you ever been to the beach and you get swimming and you don't realize where you are, and next thing you know you're like, I'm swimming hard as I can, but I'm stuck. And the harder I swim, the farther I get away from the beach, I'm drifting away. That's kind of like I get sometimes. I'm struggling. I'm like, what's wrong? And all of a sudden I feel, a jerk. Are you getting what I'm saying here? I've drifted too far. He's like, no, boy, I've got you. You know what? You know what that jerk is? You know what? There's people, I've talked to people before and say, you know what? I struggle, and I don't know when it's the devil, and I don't know when it's the Lord, and I feel like I'm weak, I'm backsliding. Let me tell you something. All of a sudden, you're going to feel a jerk. That's when he lets you know that, hey, you're saved. Get back in here. The anchor's got a hold of you. Come back in. I'm going to share something with you. What brought all this on? And you're going to say, how in the world did a bridge bring that on? I was watching a documentary thing on New River Gorge Bridge. And I started thinking about anchors in my mind. And I started thinking about how things are anchored to things. And have you ever noticed when they build a big bridge? I'm not talking about these little highway bridges out here, but when they build a big bridge, I would think that it would be simpler to start right here, Joe, and build a ride straight across. They don't build it like that. They start on both ends and come in the middle. You ever notice that? Look it up on YouTube. Watch that documentary, how they built New River Gorge Bridge. It's pretty interesting. Just a little thing thrown out there to you. A little study guide. But in order for that thing to get out there at a span and hang there, it's got to be anchored to something. And you might have to dig down a little bit to get on the rock. You know, we want to get involved in things and we want to get into things, but we don't want to dig too much, do we? We don't want to get down to the root of things. We don't put a lot of energy in certain things. But when you get down into the rock and you're anchored to the rock, as we're in this anchor right here, and they start forming that bridge up, and it meets in the middle, like that. And it's perfect. But I was kind of thinking about the Lord, and I'm thinking how He deals with me. And I talk about life as levels, you know. And I don't like to stay in the same level very long. And I like to try to get to a different level as soon as I can. And every now and then, it might be I feel like a year before I do something. But my whole life, though, it seemed like it's been based on levels. And I kind of feel like when I get up on this level, then he's on the same level with me, but he's straight across from me, if I'm making sense. And then when I step up to here, this next level, it's the same elevation, but he's looking right at me. Just like, when he called Peter out, he was looking right at him like, come to me right now on a direct line. But then you get out here so far and storms start to come in our lives. Just the same way a storm came in between him and Christ, and how he his faith kind of went away from him for a little bit. You know what? We got to be stronger than that. We got to be willing to face the storm. Amen. You know what the least amount of faith is? Hope. Hope. You ever talk to somebody? Somebody that's real confident? Yes, sir, we'll get it done. Yeah, you want that built? Yeah, man, we'll have it done in 3 days. And you can talk to somebody else. Well, you know what? I hope I can get so-and-so to help me. And, I got to get a hold of Jimmy Collins. I hope he lets me have the backhoe. And, I'm hoping to have you in it by a month. But at the same time, that man's still hoping that's going to happen. He's debating about that. Like whenever the veil was, let me just read it. Now I'm about to close. I know I've rambled and went on. Hebrews 6:18 says, let's see. Yeah. That by two, she put that up? No, I don't know if I pronounce that word. In things in which it is impossible for God to lie. It is impossible for God to lie. This hope we have as an anchor of the soul, both sure and steadfast, and which enters in the presence behind the veil. Hope. Hope. The veil. When the veil was up, and he was on the mercy seat. But you know what? That veil is no longer there. He is there. We don't have to throw things over the veil and hope that it gets to him. We can look at him, look down to him eye to eye, face to face. You say he can be that intimate with me? Yes, he can. He can be that close to you. Right now, he's telling you exactly what storm you're thinking about. We all have them. We all have them. You know what? We need to start taking advantage for when we're in here. For when we're in here, we need to take advantage of it. Now, there's people sitting here right now that's going through a storm that won't come up to be prayed for or won't bump the altar because why? I have no idea why you won't. But is that storm too important to keep you away from God? To get to your next level? To get in your ministry what you want to do? Is it that important that one little thing that's bothering you? You know how many times I talk to people on job sites, and I talk to people sometimes at Walmart, and they say, you know what, Brother Aaron, I would come to church for that one little thing. One little thing knocking me out of it. Why? I'm just being real with you right now. Why are we like that? If there's something you want from Him, why not ask Him? Why not ask Him? It ain't no different from our mom or dad when we say, well, Mom, I want this. What do you want for dinner tonight? Well, I want hot dogs. Well, do they fix you hot dogs? It's that simple. He is that simple. I'm going to read one verse and I'll try to get out of the way. I'm trying to close. Romans 8:39, nor height, nor depth, nor other created things shall be able to separate us from the love which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. When we are anchored into Him, nothing could come in between you and the anchor. Nothing. Not depression, not alcohol, not drugs, not a bad husband, not a bad wife, not that bad job, not that the parents I was raised, how I was raised, my past. You know what? How many times I hear about a past, how I was raised? It's not about the past. It's about what's going on right now. There's nothing that's going to cut that rope. Nothing. Anything could try to cut the rope between you and the anchor. You know what? You can drift all you want to. He will jerk you back, and the rope will not cut. You are His. And He loves you. And He wants what's best for you. If we all stand just for a minute. And half of it didn't come out like I had planned. Just play something soft there, Jay, if you don't care. Come on, let's take care of it. Let's take care of the storm. Come on. Don't wait for the song. Come on. Come on. Let me tell you something. You will never guess how many times I've kicked him out of my truck. I've kicked him out of my house. That is his job. He does not want you to get close to the Lord, not one bit. Not one bit. A storm can lighten, can thunder, and can do all that, but you know what? It passes. Every time it passes. Let me tell you something. I've been through some rough storms, and they've all passed. They've all passed. I'm not going to lie. Tell you false. My roughest storm I ever went through for about a year. Didn't want to get up in the mornings, didn't want to go to work, didn't want to go to a friend's house. I want to sit in my house, all I want to do. To this day, I can't tell you what put me there. To this day, I cannot tell you what even got me there. But I do know this. If I wouldn't have faced the storm, it was going to get worse. It's going to get worse. You know what? There's some of you sitting here tonight. Well, preacher, you're not preaching to me. I'm not in a storm. Well, get ready. It's coming. It's coming. You're going to have one. You live in this world long enough, you're going to have one. And the thing about it is, you got to be ready to do what you do. You got to be braced up in Him. You got to be that storm might not even be. It might be just as simple as I've got my back pain, or I've got a brain problem, or I can't get around like I used to. We all have that, you know?
It's a rope to undergird the ship. We're all called to be those helpers. Somebody needs to pray, needs a prayer. Talk to them. It doesn't matter if you're the one throwing the rope. It doesn't matter if you're one of the men on each side of the boat. Take the undergirding under the ship to the other side. It doesn't matter what place you are. God has called us all to help. Sherry just got a text from Sister Tanya. And Taylor got another report back today that was not good. Little Taylor, how old is she now? 12? She's 12 years old. She's been dealing with leukemia for how long? Since she was 7 years old. So that family needs some help. They need some people that are willing to undergird the ship that they've been dealing with, that they've been on. And I believe that God has called this church to be that tonight. So I'm going to ask this church full of helpers. I know you are because I see you. You've helped me. I think it's time for us to just kind of come together. We don't need to make a circle. All we need to do is bow on our knees and call out that child's name unto our Heavenly Father. So I'm going to ask everyone that will tonight to just come up, and we'll dismiss here. We're just going to dismiss. No, we're not. I got some stuff to say. But we just want to pray for Taylor right now. And let's just pray however you pray. However you pray. Just remember, you're being a help.